and seems clear. Yeah, Mark, we're live. Hello.
Ooh.
How you doing?
Hey, great. It's my first live television broadcast ever, so if I get a little nervous, I'll just power through it.
Well, you seem like a chill dude. So it seems like you will power through it. So most of the time, I start with only one question. What brings you to Latvia?
A good friend of mine, Kristaps Putelis, what's up, Kristaps, was dancing in the whatever the Latvian word is for the Song and Dance Festival. And I'm on a long, extended European trip, and we were kind of in contact, and he's like, yo, I'm dancing on Friday. So I came in to see it.
And were you nearby?
I was in Russia for about a month. I try to...
You need a visa for Latvia, right?
No, it's Schengen area. And
What? For Russia?
No, for Russia, yes, you do need a visa. I had World Cup tickets.
So when you come from Russia to Latvia, you don't need a visa?
Mm-mm.
Really?
No, I don't. If you don't need a visa for Latvia, it doesn't matter which direction you come from.
All right.
Just a matter of whether you need one or not. And for a U.S. citizen, you can enter any Schengen country for 90 days without a visa.
Ah, look at you.
Yeah, well,
those U.S. privileges of yours.
I was actually a little nervous on the way to the border because I hadn't looked up the restrictions for a while.
Ah.
And I saw some stuff about visa, but didn't need one, fortunately.
Mm-hmm.
I've not gotten turned back from a border yet, but one of these days.
So you came for the Latvian song festival then?
Yeah, and I'd always
Did you see the end big finale, the concert?
Yeah, were
Really?
you there?
No.
What were you doing?
I don't know, probably. Well, I was driving at that time because I was going actually to Bauska at that time, and I was coming back to Riga.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, if you would ask me, for me, the song festival, I participated in that once, and yeah, I'm good. It's mostly for real. I think for real enthusiasts, and those. I don't want to be rude, but I just need to adjust so the monitor doesn't shut off in 3 minutes.
Oh, take your time. While you're adjusting that, for the people who don't know, mainly viewers who might be following me, the Song and Dance Festival happens every 5 years in Latvia to commemorate their independence.
Every 5 years? Are you sure?
I believe it's every 5 years is what
I thought it should be every 4 years. Maybe they changed something. Either way, it happens on a fairly rare basis.
Is it every time the World Cup is?
No, it's just a coincidence this time, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure, because we have the type of festival I participated was not the general one like this one. It was for the youth.
Okay.
Right, and I don't know what constitutes being a youth, because at that one you saw adults all over the place. So yeah, but they divide somehow, and those youths participate also in the big one. So go figure, right?
So how do you feel about it's a strong showing of patriotism by the people for it?
You mean the festival? I don't know if it's for patriotism per se. It's more of it's a cultural tradition in a sense, and so I guess the nationalism would be attached to the continuity of the traditions and rituals and culture. But then again, yeah, man, if you ask me personally, it's the 21st century. Right, it's not really the case anymore as it was back then when it started. Because actually, one of my ancestors was the one of the 4 or 5 people who founded that festival. Well, so I'm told, right? So the encyclopedia says. So yeah, and I know what my ancestry line with him is, right? But when it comes to him, well, he was at a time where you didn't have really a Latvian nation in general, right? But you had a Latvian, not necessarily ethnicity, but somewhat of a cultural awakening, right? That we people over here, we should be actually more or less solid. So what's the word? Solid. Is it
autonomous?
Solidarity to each other? No, not really. So basically, we should be more, in tune with each other in a sense, right? We shouldn't fight with each other. We should be. I want to use the word solidarity, but I don't know the right conjugation in the sense.
Yeah, it's not exactly, but it's the right sentiment. I'm sure there's a conjugation of it that fits. I just don't have it on the top of my head either.
But you get the point, right? So there was no Latvia as on a map,
right?
But the Latvians, they started having their own sort of identity in mid to late 19th century. So afterwards, it started rolling, and this type of event is sort of one of the culminating events of that kind of movement that they actually showcase their sort of identity. But then again, I mean, every nation has some midsummer festivals. Every nation has some sort of dance and songs, rituals, traditions.
But I've never seen one like that one necessarily, as far as 30,000 participants in a...
Well, I guess now you could say Latvia is just owning up to it, right? Oh, right, we could differentiate ourselves with it, so let's just go all out with it.
Yeah, I've seen festivals in lots of different countries, but one with that magnitude of people and just the raw emotion that was pouring through the crowd. I was sitting next to a lady who's 63 years old, and her mother had...
How do you know the precise age?
She told me.
So
we were conversing. We were having a good time.
Oh, but you didn't come with her, right?
No. My friend had a floating around ticket that he got for me. So I got this ticket. I get in. I sit down. It's just a giant stadium that's sort of overwhelming. I mean, it's a huge amphitheater.
And so you started chatting with a local lady?
Yeah, I asked her what the song meant, the lyrics.
But she didn't speak English, right?
She actually spoke English very well, surprisingly well.
Yeah, that is surprising.
Yeah, for a lady of her age, I was
Did you ask her if she's from here or just visiting?
63 years in Riga, her whole life, even through the occupation and all that. So she started explaining the songs to me and just explained that her mom used to sing in the festival every year, every 4 or 5 years. And her mom had just passed away the previous year. And so she was really, I think she was happy to have someone to kind of share the experience with. And I was completely grateful because she explained in wonderful metaphor what every song was.
Well, I'm not sure whether or not every song has some metaphors attached to it, but I guess you could...
Well, she just translated more or less. I didn't know
the
subject matter of them even.
Because sometimes it's quite weird if you trace back. Well, I don't know the current repertoire, right? So don't quote me on it. But at least a few times when you traced back the origins of a particular song, it's just started like a bar song or something like that. It's just like really just simple, right? But it got just sort of attached to the cultural movement, right? So then you have a simple bar song going to a... I loved the background of a lot of the songs, but she was even describing the background of the different composers, conductors who were leading the choir. Said, and all in English.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Yeah, I was fascinated.
The only explanation would be that she's an English teacher or something like that.
Actually, I asked her, but I don't think she heard me. We didn't really get into it. She was really focused on the festival, which was so neat to see.
How much did a ticket cost?
So the face value on mine was €55, and
the seat was not necessarily very close, right?
Yeah, it was like second tier, I guess. There was one more section in front of us, but there were probably 3 behind us.
Yeah.
I think the other, I think low end they were like €10 or something, but
you can at least hear it.
You could hear it
for €10.
You could sit outside the stadium and hear it. I think there were
for sure
12,000 singers.
So would you say that is something you didn't expect, such magnitude?
Yeah, I was definitely overwhelmed, and really the beauty of the grounds, the Mesha Park was interesting. I didn't think they would have built an entire coliseum specifically for this event, but it's definitely catered to it.
I think American real estate valued Mesha Parks as one of the 3 most valuable regions in Latvia. As far as I know. Well, it's definitely for the rich, in a sense that whole region or the part of the city.
Yeah.
So and it has the big park. Yeah. So sort of attracting quite a lot of different types of people.
So you stopped going. You were driving that particular night, though. But would
Yeah.
you attend if you were in town, or?
If somebody would pay me, for sure. Right, but well, when it comes to those things, I don't really feel the, I don't know, the sentiment in a sense, because the first time I went to a song festival was when I was, I think, 8 years old, and I didn't understand anything there. Why would so many people come together and sing songs? It was boring to me as a kid. Then it sort of was a tradition for our family members to at least once participate in those festivals. So I was in a choir, got into the, because we during that, let's say 4 year, I think it was a 4 year period, but you get the point. During the period in between those festivals, choirs and those dance troops, they have to sort of compete, right? Because not everybody who wants to go gets to go. So you compete and you get judged, so on and so forth. So my choir got in, and yeah, all that week was just little sleep, yeah, too much drinking sometimes, and just somewhat exhaustion. At the end of it, I was just relieved. Oh yeah, I can sleep now.
Yeah.
And so you see the point. I mean, when you are, I think, sort of a viewer, it seems just like really grandiose of a festival, right?
Certainly.
But as a participant, it's just, oh man, yeah, because you're sleeping. Many people who come from far, they sleep in some school classrooms,
Huh.
right? Packed together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just
Has it?
it definitely, for me, it just kills the emotion, right? Because you feel just exhausted.
Too much
And,
obligation to be able to enjoy it, maybe, or
well, it's really demanding because you don't get paid for any of it, right?
right.
It's just,
all amateur.
yeah, it's just something you as a fan can contribute to and get some freebies.
Yeah.
Get some freebies. But
Yeah,
other than
it's
that,
a good thing
it's
to do,
hectic.
though, I think it's a good thing to do, and it was beautiful. The choreography was amazing to see 30,000 people moving so seamlessly, and whoever organized those people to be able to move like that had a great mind for spatial recognition.
Yeah,
Do
that's definitely something.
Do you think it's encouraged Latvian arts as a whole? Do you think the Latvian National Choir may be better, or the symphonic orchestra? Or?
I wish I would be the right person to ask such questions, but at least I think I am, right? No, but when I
Maybe the military
when
choir.
when I would comment seriously, I would say not really, because it's it's a side event to all other events in a sense, right? It's the big culmination for song and dance.
Mhm.
But then again, it's not necessarily that Latvian culture is defined by just song and just dance, right? I mean, if you would ask me, have I ever danced? I don't know, at least 2/3 of the dance, because most of the time they have sort of a standard repertoire, and then they have a chunk that they switch. Every festival has some new songs, some new dances, but many of them, the songs and many of the dances are just standard repertoire. Everybody knows those will be there, and then, so I don't know, committee or something, they decide on the variable chunk, right? And many times I would say it's just that you are focusing on that particular dance, that particular routine, that particular segment of an event, right? Whereas culture in general would be something that's day to day, right?
Yeah.
It really depends on the region, on the people, on the, I don't know, probably the climate, many things, right? Here you saw people from one part of the country coming together with other people from the total opposite of the country and just doing the same routine,
Yeah.
right? Other than that, they might not have anything in common, just really nothing in common, because if you go, let's say, to the east, you can definitely find persons who don't really use Latvian language that much,
Really?
right? I mean, yeah, when you come, well, for instance, for Riga, I would say Latvians are the minority, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to at least the
Yeah,
language
the mayor's
used,
not from
the
Latvia.
used language.
The mayor's not from Latvia. I know that.
I think he is from Latvia. I think he's born in Riga. I think so. Well, he's politically more aligned with the Russian, but let's just. Yeah, born in Riga. Yeah, but doesn't look like a Latvian, does he?
No, so many like multiple people told me he's Russian. I didn't.
Well, he's definitely a political favoritist.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the real word?
Mm-hmm.
Favoritist for Russian-speaking people,
Yeah.
for sure. But then again, I mean, I think that's the optimum balance. If you have such almost 50-50 division between Latvians and Russian-speaking persons, because pure Russians, those who come from Russia, maybe they are, I don't know, 35 to 40%. But then you add all other nations who just speak Russian into the mix, and you have basically a 50-50 mix, right? Especially in Riga, and in the east part of Latvia, you have probably 10, 15, 20 to 80 mix.
Now Latvia is a small country, though. So when you say that the people from the east of the country, and granted they do have a strongly different culture because it's so close to the borders of both Belarus and Russia, but the western part is only going to be a couple 100 kilometers away, maybe 300 or 400 kilometers at most, right?
Yeah.
It's just interesting to think, because in to put it in terms of like relative to U.S. scale, like in Indiana, where I'm from, people from the north and the south, I guess you'd consider them different, but that's mainly because the glaciers receded through Indiana, and so the south is geographically and topographically very different from the north. Mm-hmm. But a Hoosier's a Hoosier unless they come from the region.
Who's a Hoosier? I think I've heard of it being said about a university.
Indiana University is called the Hoosiers, but people from my state are called Hoosiers, and there's a lot of
I think I saw that on Shark Tank. Somebody was
Mark Cuban's. He went to Indiana University at least. But we don't draw a lot of differentiation between the people from the north and the south of the state. Although now that you bring it up, they would be pretty different. And I think geographically we'd probably be about the same distance from the north to the south of Indiana as you would be from the east to the west of Latvia. So,
well, geography is not necessarily the main factor, is it? Because if you add the language barrier, you have a totally different scale, right? Because even in Riga, I mean, you could live. Let's say I would go to my neighbors in this building alone. I wouldn't understand. We would have quite a hard time to speak to at least a third of my neighbors. Simply because they don't really speak Latvian that much, and I don't speak Russian basically not at all.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I could understand basic dialogue, but that's about it, right? I think I could understand French better than Russian. Which is of course sometimes people ask me how come, since so many people live in Latvia and speak Russian, but see, that's where you could say that patriotism comes in, simply because my father didn't raise me to speak in Russian in Latvia, right?
Because I guarantee your father speaks Russian if he's Latvian.
Well, he does, but funny enough, he speaks Russian only to Russians.
Right. He doesn't
want
to use
it.
He knows it's a backlash to
if he knows that you are, let's say, a dude who lives in Latvia just speaking Russian, he will talk to you Latvian. And funny enough, he's a real estate evaluator, right? And every time he has some Russian-speaking clients, many times they speak to him Russian, he speaks back Latvian, then they speak to Russian, and in a sense they expect him to switch over to Russian, right? And at those times when they ask, could you please speak to me in Russian, he says, yeah, but that will cost you for translation. And funny enough,
then you have to pay for a translator too.
Yeah, and exactly. And funny enough, he has had a couple of people who, all right, I'll pay. And so he just charges more.
And how old are you, Loris?
28.
28. Okay.
Well, 89 was the birth year. 91 was the regain. What's the proper?
The dissolution of the Soviet Union.
What's the proper word? Regain. We regained our independence. But what would be the? Because I wanted to say regainage, but
yeah, regained would be because it's past tense.
Yeah, that would be
Regained the
past
word.
tense. Yeah. So we either way, Latvia regained its independence.
I'll be honest, my English is not as good as it's ever been right now. What with traveling, I've been working with a lot of sign language and.
How, well, simply because that's the most effective way.
Yeah, Latvia's been really impressive. It's the first place I've come to find English so proficiently spoken. I mean,
Where did you go before Latvia?
I was in Estonia, which had very good English. Russia, which
No, not
depending
at
on
all.
who you ask,
Not at all.
not-
Well, maybe St. Petersburg.
yeah, some of the younger population would speak, but it was good. Georgia, not a lot. Turkey, not a lot, and then Bulgaria is where I started.
Oh, yeah.
Bulgaria is beautiful.
I could imagine in Bulgaria it should be fine with English. They should have many foreign companies there, like Romania, I would imagine.
Yeah, Bulgaria is such a distant memory at this point.
Really? How long has it been?
Maybe 3 months.
Come on, how much have you been drinking? 3 months? Not that
gave
much.
It to me. No, it's just it starts to jumble together. And I was only in Bulgaria for about a week before I started on the trip. So in relative term to how long I've been traveling, it's been such a small portion of it. But I definitely remember the landscape and the monuments and some of the great people I met. But I didn't really get a chance to try out. I was in the countryside a lot too, so I didn't really totally get to feel out.
The whole of Bulgaria just a big
much.
countryside?
Yeah, outside of Sofia, which is a pretty cool capital. I like Sofia a lot. But yeah, the bold countryside. And so you don't get a lot of interaction to get to test and see how many people do speak English.
I see what you mean. What was the reason you started traveling in the first place? I mean, this trip.
The big initiative for being in this part of the world was the World Cup. I've always
So you just wanted to put two events in one? In a sense.
So I sold a company recently and kind of wanted to go clean my mind a little bit. And I've always been a traveler and a vagrant and a little bit of a vagabond at heart my whole life. I could date that back to like when I was 2 years old. But
is it related to your family? In a sense, just moving a lot, or?
We had a pretty stable childhood, although my dad was a transient, more or less. I mean, he was from South America. He moved to the U.S. when he was 17, so my grandfather was...
So you are part Latin American?
Not by bloodline. My grandfather was a missionary in Peru.
Oh.
So, but my grandfather lived all over the place. He was definitely, and maybe it skipped a generation, because my dad got to the U.S. and stabilized pretty quickly, found a home and set down roots and started a family. And I've just always had the wanderlust in me, and
that's quite uncommon for Americans, is it?
I meet a few while I'm traveling. I guess it depends. I mean, it's such a large country. It's
well,
like
I thought Americans usually, for those who have passports, that the most favorite destinations would be some Italy, France, those traditional touristy type of places.
Yeah, definitely the way I travel is unconventional, but you could probably say that for most populations. U.S. people do love their Mexican beaches and their Barcelonas and their Munichs and
Munichs? Really?
things like that. Yeah, Germany and U.S. have a lot of close ties, surprisingly. Our
Are you sure?
cultures, I'm positive of that. The Germans built a lot of the cities in the Midwest and throughout the country. We actually, Indianapolis, where I'm from, the street signs in downtown initially had German names on them. The Vonnegut family designed.
Wait a second, is it related to the Second World War?
No,
Something?
after the First World War, they actually changed the street signs, changed all the names. So now all the names on the street signs are states of the United States, but originally they were German names, German words.
Before the First World War?
I believe it was after the First World War, they changed them to English words so they wouldn't be encouraging the German population, even though most of the city was developed, designed, and built by the Germans. So the Athenaeum, which is the oldest building in Indianapolis, it's a German cultural heritage center.
What was the reason? What was the reason that so many Germans lived there?
I don't know.
Because I actually wouldn't be able to tell you anything about Indianapolis. I think it should be somewhere more to the west of America. I think so. Maybe middle.
It's called.
It doesn't have an ocean line, right?
No, no ocean. But we do touch a Great Lake.
Yeah, Indianapolis. Well, I do Indianapolis from the name, the Indianapolis 500.
Good on you.
Yeah, But yeah, I don't see the point in two sports that are popular in America: baseball
Mhm.
and NASCAR. What's the point?
So baseball is the American pastime.
But is it though?
Well, it's more the Dominican and Nicaraguan and Mexican pastime. And
But do you, as a kid, for instance, did you enjoy playing baseball?
like
Because it's just catch.
I played maybe like 2 years. Soccer is the most participated in sport for youth in the United States, which is interesting.
Not basketball?
I mean, Indiana, everyone plays basketball. That's our state's known for kind of playing basketball.
Oh.
Indy 500 is technically an IndyCar race, but NASCAR is the most popular sport.
What's the difference?
IndyCar is going to look a little more akin to like an F1 car.
Oh, all right.
But not the same. So like if you put it in between a NASCAR and an F1 car, you're going to end up with an Indy car.
All right, get it.
And I'm sure we could tag either Peter Evans or Tom Dunmore in this, and they could tell you what the difference between an F1, an Indy, and a NASCAR car would be.
Yeah, don't bother. Not that important.
I don't know. Facts are fun.
So what was your favorite sport then?
I always played soccer. And then I had brothers, so we'd always be fighting. So I guess soccer and fighting.
Interesting. Well, yeah, at that time, I guess you didn't have real MMA, right?
I had brothers. We had the original MMA.
Yeah,
I got the scars to prove it.
I see. Is in Indianapolis somewhat rural, in the sense that you have lots of agriculture?
Man, did you do some background research on this? I think.
I mean, look, if you would ask me something about New York, maybe I would know, just because we have the Latvian basketball player in the Knicks, right? About Los Angeles, maybe because it's just the entertainment industry's capital. But yeah, Indianapolis, or I don't know, Kentucky or whatever. About Kentucky, I probably would know that. I think Muhammad Ali is from Kentucky.
Excellent.
Well,
Excellent.
I just saw a documentary recently, so that's why I think he was the one who said in the documentary, or maybe his brother, that about Kentucky they say we have beautiful horses and fast women. I think it was he said about in Kentucky.
I'd never heard. That sounds more like a Hunter S. Thompson quote, who's another Kentuckian. He's one of my favorite authors, but I think we should kind of turn this around and do a quiz on you.
Go ahead.
What's the capital of Washington State?
Seattle, right?
Do you know any facts? What would you describe? What's one thing you would know about Washington? Do you know any famous people or anything about the geography or
about the state? I think Amazon is there, but
excellent.
Yeah.
I don't know. What about?
Oh no, Washington has also Microsoft, right?
Yeah, both of them. How about how many states border Mexico?
How many states border Mexico? Well, I would imagine at least 2.
Yeah, it's at least 4. But
is it Texas, Arizona? Yeah, no clue.
You mentioned
California?
Yeah, California.
Really? All right, and what is the 4th?
New Mexico.
New Mexico. Ah, that's where Roswell is, right?
Maybe.
Isn't it?
Oh, Roswell. Yeah.
Roswell, yeah.
Yeah.
But
do you believe in aliens?
I would like to believe in aliens, but I haven't seen any proof. So.
Are there any here in Latvia? Are there any Latvian stories?
Conspiracies?
Yeah.
Well, I think they're more political than extraterrestrial. About conspiracies, we don't have such a long time. We don't have so much of free time historically, right? To make up many theories. So those ones we have are mostly about politics, I guess. Yeah, the Germans and the Russians, they just made something, and they agreed to do that and this. And now it's the Americans.
Oh, great.
Everything's controlled by the Americans, which is probably true.
Yeah,
let's be honest.
And it probably was controlled by the Germans and the Russians for a while.
I guess so, but it's not that bad under the Americans.
Yeah, the bar was not set very high by your previous occupiers.
Sort of.
With your thick history of folklore and folk tales and kind of hand in hand with the singing that Latvia has, I would think you guys would have a little, maybe an imaginative history or a little more creativity in your storytelling. I wonder if aliens don't show up in any of those songs.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see that, but I think as far as I know, most of those folk tales revolved around either getting it on, marriage, or just herding sheep or something like that. I mean, we look at it this way. I think Latvia was one of the first nations in Europe at that particular time which had almost no illiteracy, which would be somewhere around the 19th century, right?
Wow.
But I think it's more related to the Germans again, or the Prussians maybe, because I think the Prussians are the originators of the modern day educational system. I think so, because ancient Prussian, Lithuanian, and Latvian are related languages, right, under one branch. So ancient Prussian is gone, and now we have Latvian and Lithuanian,
the two surviving Baltic languages.
And Latvian was somewhat reformed, because I don't know, up until I think either in between the two world wars or a bit after the second one, it got reformed in a sense that we don't say a word particular with the ending like that, but just switch it up, right? And so the divide between the Latvian and Lithuanian language get even bigger. Because at one point in time, it used to have more similarities, but I don't know why. That's the one of those funny things, right? Because some people, I mean, you could probably have, I don't know, 20 people at that time making up those rules that will be applicable to all the rest of the millions of people for generations to come, right? Which is the sort of awkward thing about politics and language, I guess, because we seem to have that knack for centrally controlling language, like from the French. I think so. So when you speak about culture, for instance, yeah, probably just look at Napoleon, then look a bit to the west in Germany, to East Russia, mix it together, take some Lithuanian and Prussian in the mix, and voila. Right.
With a lot of Scandinavian in it, though, also, as far as more of the physical features. Because I was looking up today about how Latvians are generally taller than most populations, and that's kind of the Scandinavian, the kind of tall stature.
Are you sure? Are you sure? I think Germans are on average bigger.
Yeah,
the Dutch for sure.
They might be.
I think Dutch people are giants.
Scandinavia definitely has a reputation for being kind of tall and like fair and.
Well, funny enough, I think around an hour or so, a Swedish couple will arrive. Maybe do a podcast as well. So we can ask them. So what's the average height? Because the chick is definitely blonde
and tall.
Well, sort of, yeah. I mean, for a chick, it's for me it's difficult to evaluate, because in Latvia you see all different types of sizes and shapes, right? So, but the usual stereotype about, for instance, Sweden is blonde everywhere, right?
Blonde, blue-eyed.
We need to check on that.
Tall and fair.
Because I had a Finnish dude once, and he was definitely the perfect stereo. I told him, you are probably Hitler's wet dream.
Is that where I don't know. I was wondering if that's where the Aryan race traces to. Because you were mentioning how the Germans are very tall, and a lot of those features that we just described could also be used to describe the Aryan race.
I don't know if Aryan is even a race. I think it was just a sort of concept for white people with favorable features, I guess, politically favorable features. But I'm not sure whether biologically you could.
Yeah, it doesn't have roots.
Really differentiate Aryan, right? Huh. I think America has some problems nowadays with being too over liberal when it comes. Oh, there's no race, there's nothing like that and stuff like that. Well, that's. People get silly sometimes, I guess. But yeah, I mean,
you can go on if you want.
As far as I remember, we I don't know, eighth class or something like that, the biology book, it said either European or Europoid, something like that, race, Negroid race, and Mongoloid race, as far as I remember. And then the differentiation was, I don't know, ethnically, culturally, whatever. But I don't know what the logical argument would be, because I remember I read a couple of months ago, I read an anthropology book, and it had just a few lines about race is just a concept. In a sense, it's like what? It didn't go into that topic, right? It's just mentioned on just passing by. I don't know if it's weird. That doesn't seem academic. It's just that, well, race is just a concept, right?
Well, I mean, evolutionarily, we would track back to one single human race. So,
I think that's where the aliens come in, man. See, then it would be a much better story. Think about it. I don't know. Let's say 10,000 years ago, some aliens just decided, all right, let's give those monkeys some education, and then they gave those Asian monkeys some education, those African monkeys education, those American continent monkeys. Yeah, all monkeys get some education. For no reason, they built everywhere some pyramids in different shapes, but still pyramids.
There were still monkeys when they made the pyramids. It wasn't.
Who knows, man? Who knows how they moved those big stones, right? Nobody knows.
But I think having a nice silverback to carry the stone would help quite a bit. If I were like a smart monkey, that would make. I think it'd make building the pyramids even easier.
Should be. It should be. That would be a proper purpose for otherwise useless ape, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, build some buildings for us, dude. Right. But other than that's where I think it gets tricky, because in a sense, if you have all those you mentioned those folklore type of writings, right? If you have those ancient Indian type of hieroglyphs or whatever, that's where something interesting, because that's definitely there. Who made it? Nobody really knows. You can make up assumptions, but then again, who knows for sure?
So we're currently making a Latvian folktale about how the aliens gave monkeys intelligence in order to build all the world's monuments.
And founded the song festival, song and dance festival. Sure.
Founded the song.
See, all traces back.
That's funny.
I think at one point in time we should discuss, so who shot JFK, right?
You know what, my U.S. history
it is inevitable. I think inevitably, when you talk about alternative theories for some life occurrences, aliens, JFK, moon landing, 9/11, of course.
Elvis?
That's the new. No, what about Elvis?
That he's not dead. He's living. Someone took him. He's living somewhere.
You have that, I guess, for about all dead celebrities. Because Tupac is also still alive somewhere, right?
Yeah. We could talk about the Illuminati, but it might get us killed.
Nah, I don't think. I think we're good. Facebook will protect us. Well, I don't know about Illuminati, but I thought the real concern was about the Bilderberg group. Do you know Alex Jones?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I remember somewhat, I think 10 years ago, well, basically when the big financial crisis hit, right? I remember just asking simply, well, so what's the reason about this mess, right? How come you didn't see something ahead of time? What happened, right? And it sort of dawned on me that people were just sort of grown-ups, but then again, children. No real forethought for many of the things they do, right? So they're all right. How could I avoid such things happening to me, right? So let me just Google something, right? And then I found, I don't know if it was, I think the first documentary I saw was called The Money Masters. I think it's probably still up somewhere in the internet. It was, I don't know, 5 hours or something like that. It was really long, but it's quite interesting. So basically just describing I don't know how long the history was, but describing the history of money and finance, banking, currencies, all those different things, banking dynasties. Right? The Rothschilds would be probably the most popular ones. So that was quite interesting. And then somehow from that, either it was a YouTube recommendation or whatever, I got into many different things. And one of the first different things was Alex Jones, a documentary from him. I think it was some Abomination or something like that. It was somewhat about Obama, right? But still, it wasn't necessarily about him particularly. It was basically about the political regime as such. And it had many different things that seemed quite, first of all, factual, and second of all, quite interesting. Well, not necessarily esoteric, but still quite interesting and not commonly known, right? And from then, I somehow got into, I somehow found the website Red Pill TV, and then it was totally off to the races, because that was a great site. It was really a great site. You had different types of topic: health, health, economy, politics, philosophy, history, whatever. And I don't know, maybe there were some nonsensical documentaries, but there weren't really much. Most of them were quite good quality. Like, I think Zeitgeist was one of the next I saw after the Money Masters.
Are these conspiratorial, or are they conspiracy websites or documentaries, or?
Well, Zeitgeist, yeah, the trilogy was, I don't know about the second or third, but the first one was about, I think, 3 parts: religion, with either economy or money, and 9/11. I mean, it was Zeitgeist, the first movie. I don't know why, but I even heard that about something about that movie just in some random occasion, just quite really unconnected to anything related to the internet or whatever. Yeah, so I was.
So do you chronicle this information? Do you put it back in your head and kind of hold on to it, or do you decipher it as you're reading it? Do you, or watching it? Do you go over it with, like a critical eye? How much of this? Because anytime there's a conspiracy theory, I think conspiracy theories are great for the world. I wish more people would listen to conspiracy theories and study conspiracy theories. Because I think it helps to open your mind to possibilities. Although I don't generally, I wouldn't say I believe any of them 100%, but I do think there are portions of every, maybe not every, but there's portions of many of them that hold truth.
For sure. It gives you a different angle.
And it at least keeps you from constantly reading the status quo and just kind of going through that cyclical nature of reinforcing your already preconceived notions, whereas a conspiracy theory is going to it's going to be a little out of left wing. And
digs deep.
It's going
at least that's what a quality conspiracy theory should do.
It's going to shake you a little bit. And if you read them, enough, like, I don't know, the 9/11 conspiracy theory, I think is fascinating. I really think everyone should read that and consider possibilities, I
think most of the people wouldn't even be bothered by the 9/11 events anymore. I think so.
And what do you mean? How do you?
Well, look, at that time, it was 2007, 2008. It was almost just recently, 5-6 years ago. There was this terrible event, right?
Yeah.
So it was quite interesting to see those lots of interviews with engineers. Saying, no building falls by itself like that. You have to detonate the big pillars or whatever, right? That was quite interesting. Now it's 17 years ago, the event. Man, it's a totally different generation. This time around,
we're such an ADD society, anyways. People wouldn't even be able to sit through and watch the whole thing at this point.
Probably.
If it's not in a meme, people don't listen to it anymore. A full article is wow. Oof. Let alone
but it's great, isn't it?
Was.
But it's great because I remember I talked because my sister finished her PhD in America and came for a couple of months.
Where'd she go to university? You knew I was going to ask that.
I'm not really sure.
And was she in the United States?
She was. Oh no, I think I know. She was. What was the Utah, the Mormon state, right?
Yeah, Brigham Young possibly, or Utah University, Utah State.
She went. What was Salt Lake City the capital of Utah?
I believe so. Yes.
And it had one university, right?
Brigham Young is the popular university out there.
No, I thought Utah had one was like Utah University, and the second was the State of Utah University, something like that.
Utah State or Utah
something
State.
Like that. So I think she wasn't in Salt Lake, but in the other one.
I have a friend who's living right there in Logan. I think.
I think Logan. Yeah. That's the word I heard. Yeah,
it's a nice campus. Utah is my favorite state in the United States that I've been to. I haven't been
just
to
because of the Mormons.
I like the Mormons a lot. I have a lot of respect for the Mormon faith. There's a lot of discipline in it, and I respect that. And they're very self-contained people in the sense that they don't cause a lot of harm to me.
I think I'm not the right person to speak about Mormons because I met once Mormon missionaries in Latvia, and they told me, and they caught me in the right moment because Either I was on vacation or something like that, but I was like, all right, tell me what you got.
seem like
right?
a Mormon missionary's either like worst nightmare or best dream. I don't know.
So long story short, I got to their what's it called, the center, right?
Mm-hmm.
They showed me what they offer to people because they sort of want to hook you with free English lessons.
Huh.
They go around the city and says, "Oh, do you want? How are you?" and stuff like that. And then they, "Oh, do you want to learn free English for free?" Stuff like that. So I went there, yeah, and they showed some short version of a film about the origins of Mormonism, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they gave me the book of Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want me to do? Well, we would enjoy if you would read it or so. And at that time, I mean, I was already constantly reading, so I said, all right, I can do it. It's not a big book, right? I can read it. So I read that thing, right? Yeah.
Speaking of
That's about it, right?
speaking of conspiracy theories or whatever, I think it's fascinating and but you know they're giving you free English lessons.
Well, no, they didn't. It's
It's
just a marketing.
Did they rescind their
slogan.
offer once?
Well, the free English lessons were considered to be going to that place and basically just praying, speaking about your life if you want to in
Right.
general, right? But other than that, it
There's-
seems to me quite interesting just to see their perspective on what they're doing. Because yeah, I mean, I met one dude, a missionary. It's funny enough, they call themselves elders, as far as I
Mhm.
remember.
Mm-hmm.
So that dude who was basically younger than me, right? is
You
telling-
didn't need English lessons anyways.
Not at all, yeah. But it was, I think it was just because the time was so good. I mean, I didn't have anything I needed to go to or whatever. So that day particular was just all right, yeah, because it was quite close.
Mhm.
I mean, they have a new, bigger building now, and I went to that as well, simply because I brought back. I wanted to bring back the book,
Uh-huh.
right? And
yeah.
and it turned out the elders are rotating. So after 6 months or so,
Mhm.
those ones are not even here anymore, right? So but they use they still use the same phone number. So I basically text them, oh hi guys, I could bring you your book back. So oh yeah, thanks, come to that place, right? And
And
then
then it
go
was
there.
different
Oh,
guys.
who are you, right?
Oh,
Yeah, but anyway,
let
I mean,
down.
and at that time I was going to some photo courses,
mhm.
right? And I needed I had some homework to do, basically to take different kinds of pictures, right? So all right, get this book, and so I made them just hold the book in an angle that I see the picture of Jesus behind it, and I tried the lighting a little bit. So yeah, I got that for my home assignment.
Good picture. Did you win an award for it or anything?
No. It was just for because I don't know. I don't remember what the home assignment was, but basically you had to bring, I think 4 or 5 different types of pictures. Right, the composition should be original as possible. So yeah, one of them was just Jesus.
Do you
with the Book of
have
Mormon.
Do you have a Mormon temple here in Riga? Is there a temple?
Yeah, I think that was the what they called the new building, the temple.
Wow. But you wouldn't have been allowed to go in it if it was a temple.
No, I went there.
Then, to my understanding, a temple after it's been christened, you can only go by invitation, and invitations are only extended to members of the church. It's like a super holy, so it may not be a temple exactly. They have a different differentiation between their churches and their temples.
Ah, so maybe it was just
And
the
temple's
church building.
Yeah, it might
Really?
have been just a nice new church.
Oh, well, so let's just Mormon church in Riga.
See if it has a temple specifically.
Mormon temple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't.
Doesn't really seem.
Temples and churches in Latvia.
Yeah, nothing.
I doubt it.
Ah.
They opened one in my city and in technically Carmel, Indiana.
It's just so weird that they should even be considered, that they would be even worried about differentiating between temples and churches, because I think it's the same meaning for a building you go to pray to, right?
The temple's for like holy ceremonies and.
Oh,
like,
that's where they sacrifice the goats and stuff.
I mean, we don't ask questions. You know.
Wait a second. Do you have a confession yourself?
about something I did in a Mormon temple once.
No, not confession in the sense that you are willing to state some facts about yourself, but
Yeah,
but about
a little
religious. I
early.
mean, your orientation or religiously.
No,
I think it's called confession,
I
right?
stay pretty ambiguous. Confession.
Isn't Christianity a confession?
No, confession. When you say confession, I consider like
I know what you
Catholicism,
mean.
where they go in the.
I know what you mean. Yeah, but because we definitely in Latvian say the word confession as well for religion.
Profess. Do you profess to be Christian? Confess is has a negative connotation. Confess is like, I think it means you did something. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
setting out essential religious doctrine. Confession of faith.
So
I haven't written my confession of faith yet. I've been doing a lot of writing on this trip, but my confession of faith has not been. Haven't gotten to that chapter yet.
Confession is a statement. Confessions in religion.
Your English is better than mine. Literally.
In many religions, is the acknowledgement of one's sins. Yeah, I guess then for the English people, it's more of a statement than anything else. Yeah, but we use the word confession for
to confess
the
your
type of religion. So Christianity would be one confession, Islam another confession, right? So, and the difference between confession and religion, yeah, don't ask me that. But yeah, we'd use definitely both words. Well, either way. So you say you don't have a particular attachment to a religious faith?
I stay like a conscientious observer, let's say. How about yourself?
I wasn't really into any church things simply because my family wasn't. So I don't know if I would need to classify myself. I would probably say agnostic, probably, but yeah, I'm not really bothered. It's just that I don't pay any fees for anybody, and yeah, I can pretty much consider not sinning, but just I don't classify my actions as sin or no sin. It's just my actions, useful or not useful, in a sense.
So you classify your actions based on their productivity, whether they have utility or not.
More or less, for sure. I mean, if you consider the fact that everything that you do has a sort of an emotional side to it, right? It's sometimes difficult to really set the line between productivity and just gratification, in a sense, right? In a sense that you are quite pleased with the result. It might not be even something productive, right? It might be just completely artistic or whatever. So yeah, that would be necessarily probably the differentiation between just something that allows you to feel good and doesn't hurt anybody and maybe adds to your and other people's life.
So would you consider yourself a hedonist?
Funny enough, I used that word many times in several publications when I was my doctoral thesis is about the European Union financial sector, right? And one of the subtopics was that law, or let's say the legal research in general, should have something similar as in economics, which is hedonistic regression. So I just played with the word hedonistic simply because I had encountered that word in environmental law, because if you have, for instance, some, what's it called? Let's say you have some I don't know, dirty water from a facility or whatever, right? That stinks. The level of the stinkiness, right, would be expressed in a measurement that had some, either the root for the word was hedon, or even it had the full word hedonistic something. So it's basically a hedonistic calculation for something that's quite measurable. You have some, I don't know, probably some measurement instrument that measures sulfur in the air or whatever, and then that measurement was called hedonistic something, right? So that's when I thought, it's a good word, because what it only represents is just whether or not people feel pleased about something or not. right? So yeah, I would call myself hedonistic, but not in I guess the traditional philosophical way of just living in the moment and not caring about anything else.
Yeah, or just valuing pleasure over anything else.
Because I think it's more of a philosophical concept, just pleasure over everything.
Right.
Because
would you value anything over pleasure, or is pleasure your highest principle?
Well, look, I had a conversation once with a dude about the fact that you can differentiate people by different things, right? But you will find always fundamental commonalities, which would be probably the height differences are limited, right? You don't have 20 centimeter people and 20 meter people, right?
Right.
You have some variation, but it's still limited. Same goes for the body temperature. Yeah, you might like 21 degrees, and I would like to have the room at, I don't know, 22, 23. But it's for sure that we are not liking a freezing temperature for long, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can stand, maybe you can stand it longer than me, but we don't like that. We don't feel comfortable in such an environment permanently, right? So if you have those type of physical limitations already in place, and who knows who designed them, doesn't really matter for me. Either it was evolution or it was some creationist force, doesn't really matter. It's just a fact, right? If you have those, I would say, yeah, you have definitely the option to say, well, you can have something that's more useful, more pleasurable, more satisfying to people in general than some other thing, right? What that thing is or is not, I don't know. But yeah, the at least the direction would be definitely, as you said, that basically, yeah, that you value those things. It's just that maybe you don't value it as much, but I for sure know that it's fairly important just because I know you're human, right? Unless you are David Icke, who speaks about those reptilian type of creatures, right, who mask themselves as humans, then you have a totally different story on your hands. Don't you know about that one? Really?
I didn't
Man,
realize
you missed out.
There were hedonistic reptiles
you missed
crawling
out,
around Riga.
Because this dude, David Icke, he was, I think...
Where's he from? Is he from the U.S.?
No, Britain. I think he was British. And I think he was a sports journalist in the 80s for BBC or something like that. Well, I can just Wikipedia him, right?
It's cheating, though. I want to hear your story before you get the facts.
All right.
I can Wikipedia him on my own. I want to hear your
all right.
invention of what he might be.
So he was a sports journalist. He was on a telly. He's talking about some football matches, for instance, the results. And at one point, I think he got fired from the job, and he started to believe that it was all sort of a mystic conspiracy against truth seekers, right?
For commenting on football matches.
Well, I don't know about specifically with whether or not about football matches, but the basic sense that journalists are being silenced, or people in journalism are being silenced, just because there are some inconvenient truths, right? And yeah, we don't like that over here, buddy. Right, you better go somewhere else.
What's this era? Did you establish what time period we're talking about?
80s.
Okay.
80s. He was the journalist in the 80s. And then I think he got fired. And then he just started more or less getting into different kinds of explanations or trying to seek explanations for the world as he saw it. And the explanation he got away with is that the royal family and everybody in power is not human. They are lizards who mask themselves as human. And the main idea is for them to be able to disguise themselves in front of humans so that they don't get, nervous, right? Having their rule as not being human. And, well, basically, if you saw the Simpsons film where Earth got invaded one time by aliens, and then the aliens created elections, and one alien disguised himself as Bob Dole or something like that, and the other one... So it was basically the same gist. And
was he serious, or was he just pulling a long con?
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Because we use lizards a lot as a metaphor for like a
shady
suspicious
people
character. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's not. Well, he says he's meaning it for 100%, but I think, well, which is, it would be more reasonable to think that he's just using that concept of lizards and stuff like that to protect himself against people who might otherwise kill him. Because everybody could say now, oh, you're talking about the lizard dude, right? Just dismiss the whole of him, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in general, if you deduct the lizard thing, he speaks about why the power structure works in the world like it is, right? What would be the relations to money, families, all different kinds of things. So he's one of the biggest conspiracy theory I would say public speakers, because he charges a lot. I think if you would go to one of his seminars or speeches, you would pay quite a lot, like thousands, to get. And so he's basically telling you real facts when it comes, for instance, to, I don't know, the Federal Reserve of America, right, or the First and Second National Bank of America, or whatever. But then he's just putting that lizard thing in between. And so I guess that would be something that's useful, so nobody would assassinate him, right?
Because
he's just a fool.
Yeah, because if you talk about the Fed,
because the rest seems like pretty fine.
If you talk
pretty
about
factual.
the Fed too much, you run a risk of disappearing. But I can see hecklers being at his shows, and he's sitting here getting into like the depths of why the Fed is a terrible structure, and someone
because
just talk about the lizards.
For sure. So now, let's just type that dude in. Here you have him.
David.
A former footballer and sports broadcaster. Since the 90s as a professional conspiracy theorist. See? There you have it.
A professional you like conspiracy theories. You're drawn to conspiracy theories, I'm finding, Loris. I think
dude,
you brought them up a couple times now.
You watch once or twice some documentaries, you'll see all of them just in line. Alex Jones, David Icke.
Are chemtrails real?
The third one was, man, what that dude was quite an interesting one. Somewhat Max. Yeah, I could probably find him. But yeah, you have just a limited array of people.
Are you launching
the same cosmos?
Are you machinating for your own plans to be a conspiracy theorist one day, or maybe start a cult? Or?
I would like to have more of a conspiracy, what's it called, praxis or practical conspiracies. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would like to get into some conspiracies. I mean, real conspiracies. Right? Why not? It's just that, yeah, at least at this point, nobody has offered me a seat in the White House or something like that. Right?
Okay.
No eyes wide shut parties for me up until now, at least.
Obviously, if the camera's on, I can't say anything, but maybe after the interview, I'll be able to talk to you a little bit more. Just need to make sure you're the right guy for the position that I have in mind. You know, you got the wit. You know, you got the quick intelligence. The radio show concerns me a little bit, but if you can keep it cool on air, that's the hard thing. I don't want you snapping one day and giving out all of our secrets. I'm sure this is being broadcast to a large audience at some point. I mean,
at least 3 people, for sure. You gotta keep it together.
So if you can keep up the ruse though and keep it under wraps, then I think we could come to an agreement of some sort.
Very good.
But
we will do the secret handshake afterwards.
Do you accept Bitcoin?
Do you have actually used ever Bitcoin?
Someone was telling me, I think it was in Canada, maybe here in Latvia. I was hanging out with these Canadian Latvians. They were telling me that...
What? Canadian Latvians?
They're Latvians whose families are now in Canada because their grandparents...
Now or some...
Now in Canada, but they still...
Generations before.
Their grandparents moved to Canada to escape the war.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I think the first Latvian finance minister moved to Canada. And then his son came to Latvia. Mm-hmm. And he was actually one of the... sort of those political conspiracy theorists in Latvia. Because he said basically, you dudes are not interested in Latvian economy prospering. You do all those things that are not in the interest of the national of the society in Latvia. Mm-hmm. And so he was one of those.
I think monetary conspiracies probably hold the most weight in my mind. I think monetary conspiracies are the closest to accurate of any of them. I think the physical conspiracies and the disaster conspiracies are kind of hard to fathom. Not that I don't think anyone's capable of that much evil. Obviously, we've seen that in history where people have done far worse things. But just that I think it'd be, especially in this day and age where everyone's got a camera, I think it'd be too hard to pull off.
That's not really true, is it?
Physical conspiracy.
Because when you think about it, it's only been 3-4 years when smartphones have become really, really widespread. I remember seeing a chart. I think it was 2012 or 2013. They prognosticated the growth of mobile devices because, I think the iPhone came out 2008. I think 2010. I think the iPad, or somewhere around that, right? So they tried to figure out what would be the increased usage of those mobile devices, and it stated basically, I think 2020, maybe 3 or 4 billion people, right? Which wouldn't be even the half of the population at that time, because 2020 should be 9 billion at least. Well, now it's around 8.
Is it?
For sure.
Boy,
I'm 2018.
I'm still calling it 6.5.
What? No.
Yeah.
No. It's been 7. I don't know for how long.
I'm behind the times.
World population. Give me some Wikipedia.
7.6.
Oh, 7.6. Don't believe that. I mean, those Chinese are rabbits.
I thought they could only have one kid.
No. It's long gone, that policy.
Oh.
Officially, you can have at least 2, I think. Or you can have 2, but on average, I think it's not even that, because it's just weird. I mean, Chinese people are I think if you want to speak about conspiracies, or at least real political instruments that do look like conspiracies, I think China is one of the best places to look at. Because if you think about the past 40 years for them, it was nothing more like nothing else than just having some political mind, thinking something just half through, and then implementing it. Yeah, we'll see what happens, in a sense, right? And nobody really knows what is, why, how come. It's just that they live like they are told to, right? I think that's a conspiracy right there. Well, think about it. If you would have a regime, now you are a U.S. citizen, right? And if Trump would start to just tell U.S. citizens, all right, you will not be able to do this, to do that, and you will need to do this and that, like this, like that. I think Americans would say, "What? Did you forget you're an American, buddy?" Right? It wouldn't fly.
No, it wouldn't.
If everybody would be complacent, and if you had your liberal media cut that only state-sponsored news would come, right, and then the information would be censored by the state, maybe it would fly in even America. But as long as you have those Alex Jones types of characters, I think you're good.
See, they're saving the world. You hear that, Alex Jones?
I guess so.
We'll tag you in this, Alex. Give us a shout out.
That would be interesting, yeah. If he would see that and say, yeah, that's my validation right there.
He's going to get a plane on to Riga and come have you interview him, and that's going to be... I'm going to watch that episode for sure.
Me too.
I hope. Yeah.
Because I think if I would have Alex Jones here, I think.
So would you say the conspiracy theorists are the true anti-fascists then?
I'm not sure what would be an anti-fascist in a sense.
There's a movement.
I think most of those conspiracy theorists like to call themselves libertarians.
There's a movement currently in the U.S. that's called anti-fascism. They go by Antifa for short, and I
think those just come and go. Yeah. I mean, Europe has seen many of them, I think. I don't really think Americans do have their...
I wonder what we could learn from Europe, from countries that have sincerely lived through fascism. I mean, people in the U.S. have never even seen a glimpse of what fascism could taste like. And a lot of people in the U.S. and I bet a vast majority of people from the U.S. have never left the country, but have never like lived outside the country or even done like extensive research on countries that are or survived through fascism or lived through it, and yet they formulate these ideas that somehow the U.S. makes any resemblance to fascism. And
well, you have
it's really interesting that it's so far down the slope. You don't just like wake up in a fascist country one morning, like. But
you have those tendencies of that let's say comedians like John Oliver like to point out that at one point in time commerce does have sort of such an close tie to local and state and federal government that it seems to blend too much, right? Where you don't really see the power structure anymore or the differences between the power.
So you consider libertarians to be the anti-fascists then? I mean, that's the...
I don't really like to think of any of them as libertarians or fascists or anti-fascists. I just like to see whether or not some idea is thought out. And yeah, basically if I hear that American medical bills are going into the tens of thousands sometimes, right, I see, all right, you have a problem. I don't know, is it because of the fascists or anti-fascists or libertarians or whatever, right? But you have a problem on your hands.
What do you see in Europe that... So let's give a little case in point here, that in Latvia I see a very stark like patriotism, and people who will like, they made it a strong point to speak Latvian and use Latvian, and as a retribution for having that come under danger. You know what I mean? Like, they almost lost their opportunity to be Latvian, and for essentially they did during the time of the occupation, lost the freedom to be Latvians. And that's why I think Latvians are just as strongly patriotic and as strongly Latvian as they are right now.
It's not what Latvians say.
Well, they don't have to say it. I can say it for them.
No. I mean, Latvians most of the time say about Latvians, they don't have a spine, and that they are not patriotic at all. That the favorite dish of a Latvian is another Latvian.
Ouch.
But again, I mean, I'm not really into those type of classifications.
My question was, what has been a retribution after the rise of fascism, the rise of USSR, the rise of World War II? How, being a European yourself, how have you seen Europe react to those major world events that, you know, have cast more danger upon populations than anyone from my continent has ever seen?
I guess educating more. Because if you think about it, education would be the major point to have the foundation. But other than that, I don't see any big.
Now that's a little bit of a cop out, because, and I'll give you a little anecdote for this, is that just coming from Russia, I found that a lot of the people in Russia believe things that I've heard to be quite different sides of that story.
It's a big country, yeah. That's the stereotype of a Russian. But that they believe that they are somewhat oppressed by everybody else, that they need to fight for freedom and those values. But
a lot of the things that I've taught, there had to be congruity through their educational system. A lot of them, these things trace back, and the reason why they believe it so firmly is because it traced back their educational system. So
but they have that. Well, I guess that's the other thing about Europe, right? Many countries, small territories living nearby, and having those economic ties that actually relate to each other so much that they need to have some form of consensus about things, maybe, because you wouldn't be able to find me an average German who wouldn't think about World War II similar as an average Latvian, for instance, right? Whereas you couldn't find a Russian who would definitely think something different about World War II, what happened, who was the blame for what, and stuff like that. That's for sure. But then again, you have Russia, a big country, needing to have that's a country who has such a diverse population that they want to centrally model or create an identity, which is a bit silly in my view, because Russians are too many ethnicities combined in one territory to be able to have a sort of a comprehensible storyline.
Right.
But since Moscow makes basically all the policies, right? Yeah, they just think, and it goes not just for the primary education system; it goes for higher education as well. That, yeah. Here's how things went, right?
Right.
Oh, Americans and European scientists don't agree. Well, that's because you are paid by Soros or whatever.
Right. So if education is your response to a lot of the things that rose to the dangers that we spoke about earlier, how do you prevent this current like source of education that we're seeing? Because I think knowledge is probably the answer, but I don't know that it depends on what your definition of education is.
All right, fair enough. Knowledge, yeah.
Because I don't know. I want you to explain it a little bit better, though. I'd like you to tell me more of how you see the response from Europe to try to avoid, what has happened in the past or what they can do to grow from there. And you say education, but tell me more about what that might mean.
Well, when it comes to the differentiation between education and knowledge, I would agree with you. Knowledge, of course. And what I mean by knowledge in the sense would be just having those, I think, remembrance events many times helps. Simply because at one point in time, you as a kid start asking, well, why do they put out those flags or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So also, but that's because 50,000 Latvians were deported in animal trains thousands of kilometers into the Siberia steppes, right? Oh, right. Other than that, it doesn't seem to. I would say that the education system as a form of knowledge facilitation, when it comes to history in Latvia, it's working fairly fine because Latvian history is definitely quite a chunk for the history classes, and then modern day history, which would mean basically the 20th century history, is also another big part. So, because look at it this way, Latvia was founded only 100 years ago, right? So all those events were directly affecting Latvia, a new nation. First World War, Second World War, then the occupation regime, and now the modern times after regaining the independence. So history is that. I mean, many people in Latvia like history. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Which I always translate. You're just lazy, right? Because history is something as a side product most of the time. It just comes as a side benefit of knowing things, right? But not as a main argument. Yeah, just because in 19 whatever that happened. So what?
Mm-hmm.
You mean to say that humans acted like now also in the past? Whoa. That's something interesting, right? So
it depends if you think we've really improved as a race or we weren't sure if that was the right word to use, but it depends if you think mankind has improved their status since we entered the world, and
for sure.
And what? Yes and no, but we've improved our status for destruction as well. I don't think there was ever a massacre of 21 million people in ancient times.
What 20 million people?
Just using, for example, like the World War II as an example. Let's use.
Oh well, look.
The amount our capability for destruction is on a level that it's never been on before. And I was going through Turkey.
But after World War II, right? Americans said, I think it's too much, right? All right, let's just put the Nuremberg Tribunal up and say, yeah, I know it wasn't said in the books, but that stuff was illegal. Think about it, right? And then you have historic movement.
Was the Geneva Convention after World War II then? There was no...
Well, Geneva Convention would be mostly for humanitarian purposes.
Right, but that's what we tried them on. To my understanding, the Nuremberg trials were based on the Geneva Convention, I thought. I think it was the first time they started to define crimes against humanity and war crimes. Right. Because it used to be the case that you had the, Hague Convention about how to conduct war, right? And then you could say, oh, you didn't do as the convention said, so it's a war crime, right? In the sense that, you didn't declare beforehand or whatever. But does that make the killing any worse or better? Does that mean we've come anywhere as a population just because we've defined what mass murder is? That doesn't mean we're preventing it.
Yeah, but that's the fun fact, isn't it? Because what constitutes some atrocious crime is literally dependent on how you define that crime and when. So after World War II, only after World War II, people really started politically and legally defining many things that on that scale hadn't happened ever afterwards, but on a smaller scale have happened. And that's why you had only recently the International Criminal Court, founded in, I think, in 2002 or whatever. This is in the 2000s for sure. So yeah, I mean, look at it this way.
But
50 years have passed,
Yeah.
and we came to a world where war was the legal instrument of political discourse, to war being totally illegal against human rights, and the leaders of those who are waging war are punishable by different sanctions.
By who? By sanctions, I guess.
By the international community. I mean, that's the thing about it, right? There is no international community before the United Nations in general. The League of Nations was sort of an attempt, but didn't really
half-hearted
happen.
attempt.
Yeah, but I mean, look at it this way: we have only 50 years.
Do you think it's effective? The United Nations?
Well, it's the most effective the world has ever seen.
Do you think it's effective?
It could be more effective if you ask me, but it's definitely the most effective system that's ever existed. Because look at it this way: if there wouldn't be that system after Nuremberg tribunals, Latvia wouldn't exist nowadays, for sure. We would have been invaded by somebody at this point.
Again,
for sure.
You think a 21st century army would have still tried to invade?
Yeah, of course. If it's somewhat in the realm of legality, or maybe even not really defined legality or illegality, let's say the Crimea annexation, good example, right? Was it illegal? Was it not illegal? Yeah, you ask several people, they will give you several answers, right? But the fact is, you changed political territories.
So I was in Turkey, and I was in Troya, which is where the Battle of Troy took place, and it was amazing to go through the ruins. And these ruins are from 3,000 to 5,000 to even up to 8,000 years ago. And the Romans had brought in indoor potable water plumbing to each house, and it still existed. You're sitting here looking at these ruins that are 3,000 years old, and the lines are still intact that carried water that you could drink into these houses 3,000 years ago. And I think about how my house, I have to repair the plumbing every 5 or 10 years. There's always something springing a leak, and there's always lots of places where you can't even drink the tap water, and it's just it got me thinking about how far humanity has really come, or have we,
Yeah, but they didn't have Wi-Fi. So 1-0 for you guys.
And Alex Jones didn't live back there then, so clearly our knowledge is.
But can you imagine at that time, if you wanted to have some form of publicity, you would have to just go to, I don't know, marketplace and just shout into the crowd, right? And
just
how
go
effective
yell.
is that? Yeah, those are lizards to people, I'm telling you.
Alex Jones in Roman times.
Yeah. Now it's all happening on the internet, man. Just people who want to find that information will find it. Those who want to still live in the Matrix, man, right? Yeah. They just are going around like they have
Unless
been.
The internet is part of the Matrix, tricking you to think you're out of the Matrix. You think you're so woke just because you have the internet. And anyways, I got a quiz for you. I got a little quiz. This is something I learned at a museum here that I don't think a lot of people go to in Latvia. It's a museum, so you're probably right. where the Freedom Monument is. You got Milda up there with the beautiful 3 stars, and it's a very powerful monument. What was that monument originally?
What do you mean?
The stanchion for that monument has always been there, but it hasn't always been Milda.
I'm not sure, because I think it was built. I think it was built in the 20th century. And if it didn't have Milda...
Actually, no, it had to be the 20th century. It might have been before. But
no, I think it was just an empty space before that. But if it had some statue before Milda, there would probably been something related to war. That would be something logical.
A great leader. And I think history sees him as a great leader. My history books taught him as a great leader. Older, not super contemporary. I'll give you an example.
You mean Napoleon?
in Moscow. No, not Napoleon, but I think it's about the same time frame. I don't even know what time frame he is. I need to look him up a little bit more because he's everywhere here in Europe, particularly here in Latvia, and then in Russia there was a lot of him. In Moscow, there's a huge monument of a ship right at the river where it comes in.
You mean Peter the Great?
That was the original monument.
Really?
The Freedom Monument was originally Peter the Great.
Let's just Wikipedia the hell out of
And then Wikipedia Peter the Great so I can understand him better.
Freedom Monument. So, Freedom Monument. Where does it say something
Does it
about...
have him on there? There it is.
Oh, like this? Alright.
Taught you something. This was not a complete waste of time. You could glean one thing.
So
from this.
when was it? Freedom Monument replaced the statue of the Russian Emperor Peter the Great. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I wonder why it was destroyed in the first place. Did Stalin not like Peter the Great?
After the end of World War II, there were plans to demolish the monument.
Yeah, so it would have been Peter the Great up until then, I would imagine.
Yeah, but it seems like it was changed in the 20th century. So after Latvia was founded and probably built before then. That would be at least somewhat logical.
Possibly.
Yeah, because before that, Latvia was part of Russian Empire.
Until the Russo-Turkish War, right?
I don't know.
Russian-Turco War? It's one of those.
No, just up until World War One. Oh well, maybe. Let me guess. Well, no, up until World War One, yeah.
But a lot of it, from what I was reading just recently in my binge of museums here in Riga, was that the Russo-Turkish War is what allowed the Russian Empire to be weakened enough. And I think the Germans even established Latvia, because I think Latvia technically received their independence from Germany. I think Germany, what they did is took the land and then established buffer states, which were all the rage back in the day, such as like what Russia tried to do with Finland from between they and Sweden.
I mean, it would be probably quite logical if they did so. But in a sense, before World War One, Latvia was definitely part of the Russian Empire. I think it even says that the end of the Russian Empire was 1918. So, 1917. So yeah, the Russian Empire ended 1917. 1918, Latvia was founded. So before that, yeah, Russian Empire was here. Latvia was part of it. So yeah, we were just Russia.
And the United States?
What about it?
Apparently.
Oh well, it's probably because of Alaska, right? Is it?
Ah, okay. Clever.
It seems so. See?
Oh, yeah?
So there you have it. But other than that, Peter the Great. I think Peter the Great has been recorded in history as a sort of advanced thinker and leader, which is quite ironic.
In what sense?
For Russia, because they don't really can brag about progressive leaders, right? It's about establishing, protecting the Russian
conservative values.
Yeah. Like what?
Traditional values.
It's just that it's sort of mellow. Well, it's almost comedic to see it from afar. Because I mean, when you see Russian people, they are many times very very nice people, right? But since they live where they live, it's just that the ideology is just messing their heads up, quite bad. I mean, you are an American, right? You don't hate America, but you are open to seeing the world, in a sense, right? And if you see some point that would be that would merit you to criticize American politics, you would do so. Whereas there, I mean, if you have journalists who criticize openly the Russian government, right? Yeah, they better pack their bags.
Yeah.
Before it's too late.
I watched the Song and Dance Festival, and I even had a little bit of jealousy, I think. I thought it was incredible, and I was trying to think that if you brought all the United States together, how many songs we'd be able to sing as one that aren't maybe modern pop songs.
I think I mentioned to another American before, because he was sort of from he lives in Texas, I guess. Oh, he is he apparently he's known as the Rio Olympic selfie king.
Okay.
So he was the selfie king of the Rio Olympics. 2016.
They have like prom, or like he got some sort of award, or was this a self-appointed?
He did some selfies with some athletes or whatever.
Yeah.
And he got just quite a bit of publicity because of that. So the media somehow
sounds like a religious monarchy
called him the Rio selfie king. Well, which is good. I mean, he got almost a free world tour out of it. He get paid to travel.
He gets paid to now take selfies around the world?
He was, up until, I don't know. He went to the World Cup.
This one?
Yeah. So, but he said...
he needed to find a shtick.
Because he had some, I don't know whether or not he had the salary or whatever, but yeah, he said the company financed his trips up until some couple of months ago. And then he's just finishing, because he's been traveling for more than a year.
Well, if that company's listening to this podcast and they're looking for a new candidate, it sounds like he's retired or maybe he lost his edge. I would gladly...
But didn't you say that you sold a company? You should have some cheddar.
No, it's not as much money. Money isn't...
Well, maybe in America it's not that much money. You go to some Uzbekistan and you are the king, my friend.
I think we're all kings of Uzbekistan.
See? Have you been to Belarus?
No, I've not been to Belarus. Is it significantly less expensive than...
Should be.
Latvia?
Should be.
I found Georgia to be amazing, which anyone who's listened to this, Georgia is your top tourist destination. I would go there. I wish I had a way to get back. If it weren't like on the other side of the ocean, I would go right now.
Well, you have at least your Georgia in America.
Yeah, you can go to Atlanta too.
Yeah, there's probably some exotic things as well.
I think they're polar opposites. I guess Georgia, the state, has some beautiful like landscape and countryside, and it actually has a decent amount of mountainous region, which is surprising to a lot of people because they consider it south, which is usually considered kind of flat and maybe swamp or forest. And Georgia has beautiful conifer forests, but they also have great hills and nice mountains in the northern part of the state. Georgia, but the country Georgia was fascinating, just so lush. I mean, it had almost the landscape and the topography of Bulgaria, but it had the food and the culture for such a kind of out of the way country to have such a dense impact on the neighboring nations. You know, like, boy, still here you're seeing Georgian goods and Georgian product.
Ah, you mean that they have such a big influence on cuisine?
Yeah. I think cuisine, but also cultural. I mean, they had Georgian folk dancers at the theater last night here in Riga. You know, they did a spectacle on Georgian traditional folk and dance. But the food, the wine, they're known for. What better reputation could you have as a country than to be like, yeah, we feed you really well and it's inexpensive, and then we drink wine and when I went to Georgia, I crossed the border from Turkey, and it'd been Ramadan in Turkey, and I was starting to get a little ill just from traveling so much. I'd been on the road for maybe 6 weeks, getting just kind of a dry throat, and so you couldn't really find a lot of food before iftar, before the evening. So I kind of left at the end of my time in Turkey and rushed into Georgia, not having had a good meal early in the day for a while. Particularly because the northeast of Turkey is more pious than the other parts. Istanbul, you can kind of get whatever you want, whenever you want. But the northeast, you found to be more conservative, Islamic. Beautiful country. But I get into Georgia, and first of all, the border was a mess. No, I'm sorry, not the Georgian border. But I get into Georgia, and within 5 minutes, I pulled over at this little barbecue stand on the side of the road. Like, they're grilling out these like really good meats. And the guy sitting at the table next to me like saw my motorcycle and like saw me, and I was kind of sunburnt, and they were like, "You're not from here, are you?" And I was like, "No." Before I knew it, they'd ordered like a whole bottle of cha-cha, which we drank. They ordered me a beer. They told me like, "Here, you got to get this food," and they paid for everything but the food because I ordered that.
Mm-hmm.
Paid for all the drinks, and I hadn't been in Georgia for 5 minutes and already getting like pouring drinks down my throat and just telling me stories and talking. And they didn't speak a lot of English, but you could tell that the sentiment was like, really happy to have you there, and their reputation internationally is they like to eat and drink and have a good time.
I'm not really sure. I know they have a nice hospitality, but all those people do.
All which people? The Georgians?
All I think all in the east, in a sense, almost like that in general.
So the Kazakhs and the Uzbekis and
should have, yeah.
Tajiks.
Should have.
They call them Tajiks? Is it Tajiks? Tajikis? I don't know. I just cut the word. I cut the word "stan" off.
Fine with me. Tajiki.
I mean, your English
sounds like some dish.
You're the one who speaks
Tajiki.
English really well here. That's why I wanted to ask.
Stop it. But yeah, I mean, I've known. I think he was Georgian restaurant owner. Yeah, very very friendly dude. Always inviting when we came to visit.
So Latvians are pretty, I guess, introverted as a society, or just.
Well, depends, I guess, whom you compare it to, right? Because, in a sense, I guess we are more closer to Finnish people than Spanish people, for instance. I would say so, for sure.
Sure, I mean,
but
there'd be a lot of things pointing to why that would be.
Yeah. So, in a sense, for sure. Because I think Finnish people do call themselves introverts. Most of the time, whereas again, I'm not really seeing that introvert extrovert thing. Everybody could be an extrovert if they want to. It's just that maybe they don't feel like it.
Yeah, maybe not the scientific definition of introvert, but more in the sense that they kind of keep to themselves quite a bit compared to other populations.
Well, look, here's what might not be politically correct, but I just think that's a sign of intelligence.
And that's what someone told me. It's because they're always thinking about loftier things or something.
Well, in the sense that you do have to consider the other person, right? And you don't want to bother somebody unnecessarily, perhaps, right? Whereas I think if you would be more in the south, it's just no real care for whether or not you are actually feeling like in the mood or whatever. Right? I think it's more or less related to that. Because I don't see Latvians being any less friendly or warm towards people who they know want to hang out, or for instance, right? But when it comes to just I just met you, right? I don't know what you're up to, right? It's all right. Let me just see what's happening, right? Whereas maybe in some other countries, it's what are you doing? Oh, come here, right? Tell me, right? Yeah, it's just that I don't know. I think it's more related to the, I would call it intelligence, not necessarily degrading everybody else, right? Because friendly people are awesome. Don't get me wrong. It's just that
they're just not as smart.
I would say so, honestly. I think the Germanic, especially the Germanic speaking languages, well, the Germanic languages, right? The countries who speak Germanic languages, I think they are the most intelligent and productive countries. I think so.
But they're pretty outgoing.
Who?
The Germanic?
Well, I mean, in Germanic, I would count in Germans, Dutch,
Swiss,
British,
maybe.
Yeah, Swiss as well. Americans, Austrians, Swedish, Danish. I don't know about Norwegian.
Are those Germanic language? Swedish and Danish? I didn't know that.
Should be.
They are known for their productivity, certainly. The Germanic nations for the most part.
And satisfaction about life. What's it called? The Gini coefficient or whatever. The coefficient that says basically how happy you are in life.
Yeah.
Right. How satisfied you are.
Is there a link between productivity and satisfaction?
Well, I guess no. At least there shouldn't be.
I think there is. Absolutely think there is.
Because if you would be in a warm climate that suits your physiological needs, meaning that you have your fruit trees growing up on the hill,
Yeah.
You are just 24/7 blessed with nice weather. Um, yeah, you would be happy, right? All your primary physiological needs
I
are
wonder
met.
who has the highest suicide rate per capita in the world.
Japan, I think. I think Japan.
Hmm.
And they are a culture of shame and honor, but I think it's the same, just the opposite.
They're also, they're also on an island, but it is large cities and things like that. I think it is cultural pressure that leads to that.
Yeah, and maybe some probably some macronutrient deficiencies as well mixed in it. Because I would imagine eating so much seafood and rice should give you some deficiencies.
They live forever because of their diet.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Japan has by far the longest life expectancy.
I see
even with their suicide.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But then again, doesn't seem so the vitality isn't not necessarily there when I see at Japanese people. When I look at Japanese people,
I think 80-year-old Japanese people are more spry than 45-year-old U.S. people.
Might be the case. On the par. Might be, but you have sometimes those American people, old senior citizens, who just drink Dr. Pepper all day and feel spry as well.
I can't. Speaking of like desert islands with your fruit trees, I can't wait to be old and drink Dr. Pepper all day. That's really what I'm looking forward to. That's
specifically Dr. Pepper.
I mean, if I'm gonna drink a soda, it's gonna be Dr. Pepper for sure.
Really?
Or root beer. Root beer's good, but Dr. Pepper's got it's like the best of both worlds. It's like root beer and Coke mixed.
Uh-huh.
But where was I gonna go?
About the longevity.
I was in Spain. My trip started in Spain, and I was staying with my friend in Mataró, which is a city just north of Barcelona, about maybe 20 k's, maybe less than that. And his father, I think his father's maybe 80 years old, and he looks better than you and me. Like, he was working on his farm, and I went out and visited them on they have a little boy, he's gonna kill me because he taught me the word for it in Spanish. Huelga. I think.
Whatever.
It's a little farm, kind of outside town though, but it's still, so it'd still be like if you lived on the outskirts of Riga.
Yeah.
So they have an apartment in the city, like dead center of Mataró.
All right.
But on the outskirts, they have this little farm with probably 3 dozen fruit trees and like rows of different fruits and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And I went out to meet his dad, and his dad was working in the farm. And the guy's, I think he's approaching 80 years old, and he looks 52 or 55.
All right.
And just like muscular and thin and like agile still. And I was just...
Well, did you see him naked? To say he was muscular? Maybe he was just big in general.
Do you need
big
to
bone.
see someone? Do you need to see someone?
Well,
naked
I definitely know
not?
people who have been raised in families with, let's say, a lot of cattle, and I assume just because they used a lot of milk products or whatever, they just really got big, in a sense that they look like a closet, right? And then when they get older, they shrink a bit, but still look like a closet.
Do you drink a lot of dairy in
No.
Latvia?
Well, I would assume that the dairy consumption is quite high, as is I think the case in all Eastern European and Scandinavian countries.
Yeah,
I think so, but it's not. It's definitely not so out of the norm.
What's one thing you could consider like inherently Latvian? What's when you think of?
I guess nothing original would be inherently Latvian. Well, I mean, look, we have a population of less than 2 million people, right? And we had I don't know, 500 years at least of occupational regimes.
Yeah.
We are too much mixed with Polish, so Swedish, French, German, Russian people.
Yeah.
To be saying that there is something that's quite particularly original about Latvian culture or Latvian everyday life. At least I don't see it. I mean, I meet people like you from all over the world almost every day. I don't see the big difference. They will say, "Oh, look, I'm like an Eskimo when it comes to me and you," right? Nothing at all.
Yeah. It's funny. A lot of people while I'm traveling, I travel a lot of like off the beaten path kind of places because I'm on the motorbike. So sometimes I end up sleeping in whatever village or town, and people are fascinated by the U.S., and they've obviously heard maybe myths about it or something. they always ask me like, do you guys have like this in the U.S.? And what it's hard to explain is that because the U.S. is such a conglomeration of different nationalities, you can get anything in the U.S. You can have pilmeni, you could have vodka, you could have borscht, you could have like sauerkraut. You can have, if it exists somewhere in the world, there's a good probability that one of those peoples has brought it with them to the U.S.
And that's inherently American.
And so
we take the best most of the time and make it even better.
What we inherently have is like everything. It's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the beauty of actually the modern day and age. That America has that option of actually sharing with the world. It's just that, who knows the lines, when to stop with something? I don't know, right? Because, we get back to the political things, right? America is definitely the number one political player, right? So who knows how much they should integrate their policies with, let's say, Latvian politics, right? Who knows?
As far as world police, like how much of that is really necessary?
It definitely has to change just because everything changes inevitably.
They should intervene more and help more nations, or?
Well, maybe intervene more, but in a different way, right? Because who knows how many things are going on just because some secret agency from America has told to do something. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right? That's a big problem.
But I think there's a handful of organizations you could say the same for also. I think Russia would definitely be one of those. And I'm not.
I really don't think they have the resources.
You don't think
I really don't think they have the real resources. Well, they can target some specific countries, regions, or whatever. But on a scale that America has, the infrastructure in place, nobody has ever done that. Nobody probably will do that. It's quite incredible if you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, look.
I agree.
If I have Americans on, people have heard of podcasts, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. I have some, I don't know, Germans or whatever. What's a podcast, right? It's just that culturally there are differences. But in a sense, the variety of culture, the big colorful picture is definitely in America, right?
How about music? Loris, do you listen to music, or are you too busy reading conspiracy theories to be able to occupy your mind?
I just started thinking, shouldn't there be a genre for conspiracy theory music? Because usually if you have something shaky on your hands, you would like to
sing about it,
put it in something musical.
Yeah, like you think about like.
I'm just started thinking, because like the theme song of X-Files,
Facundo Cabral or Ricardo Silva or the famous Manu Chao, the famous kind of folk singers who sang about revolution and all that. But yeah, the X-Files theme songs are a little spooky.
See what I mean?
So you want to start a conspiracy theory band, is what you're telling me?
I'm not sure.
You have a keyboard over there. Do you play?
Well, I fiddle around, yeah. Because I bought it, I don't know how many years ago. Because we started with a friend of mine. We started just looking at YouTube videos and playing on the piano keyboard. Mm-hmm. And then out of that, just grew some experimenting with Fruity Loops. Well, it's
yeah, I know. Are you trained at all? I mean, were you trained on any instrument when you were younger?
Well, I did go to guitar lessons, but yeah, I mean, I just learned basically some what's the musical school lessons in general, which is not
music theory.
It's sort of music theory, but most of the time it was just some old songs that they teach in music school, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it didn't really catch on with me. Let's put it that way.
Not right-brained or whatever brain you use for music.
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to sort of doing more when it comes to at least music production. Not necessarily because I'm so talented at it, but because it seems to me every year it becomes easier and easier to do something musically. So I'm literally waiting for the point you could be such a doofus and still produce a nice single? Because literally, it's around a corner. Because now, for instance, this year,
Yeah.
there's a company called Mixed in Key. They mainly focus on DJs and produce software for them, but they branch out into music production. And this year they brought out a plugin which basically allows you to press a key and it plays a full chord, and then you just vary your chords accordingly, and it makes suggestions how to structure. Let's say you play one chord, what would be the proper next chord, for instance, so you don't have any disharmony or whatever. So it just stacks up like this. And I think at one point in time, it will be, you just type in.
Sounds like most electronic music.
You just type in the genre, maybe the tempo, maybe something else, and just produce me a nice track.
I mean, like a 1-4-5 is the most common chord structure for most music. Most pop music or simple folk music.
Probably. But then again, I mean, we again somehow return to the what's it called? The finality? Not the finality.
I mean,
but the what's the opposite of infinity?
Finiteness.
Finiteness? All right. So the finiteness of being human, right? Because you have a certain frequency selection for tunes, but that's about it, right? So almost always you'll find that generally some tunes are more preferred than others, right? And I think it's the same. But when you come to the original aspect, it's where you put the subjective touch into it, right? The way you actually mold it together, and the way you actually structure it, and it creates, even though the sequence would be the same as for thousands of other songs, it's still a unique product, right? And I think that's the best way to look at it, because the alphabet is also finite, right? You have 30 letters or so?
26.
So you have 26 letters, but still, how many words?
You use the same alphabet.
No, we have more.
The Latvian alphabet?
Yeah, because we have.
You have the.
Yeah. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But so you get.
I
the
never
point,
thought of
right?
music as finite before. That's interesting. I never even thought of it in terms of infinity and finite.
Well, all the particulars are finite, but the combinations are infinite.
No, I don't think they're infinite, because there's a limited number of tones that the ear can hear. So if you limit it to tones that the human ear can hear, then it's going to be finite, so long as the song ends at some point. If it's not an infinite song,
at some point,
because time is part of it.
Yeah, at some point, yes, but then again, you have those mathematical theories that you could have a point, but there are infinite points inside the point, right? Because you can always get deeper and deeper, smaller and smaller. So even though it's a point, and you see the boundaries of the point, there's an unlimited amount of points in
but it's still finite. It'll still be finite at some
I
point,
would
even
imagine,
if you break it down eventually.
I would imagine so, but if it's really the case that there's no limit in the division, then nobody can say how far you can go.
There would have it's an interesting point. Do you think
it's the macrocosm against the microcosm? So if you don't have a limit to the microcosm, how could you say that the microcosm is limited?
I would think at some point you could define one note. Like if you just had an A note or something and broke it down and broke it down and broke it down, eventually you'd reach a point where you can't break it down anymore. It's not like you're dividing it by half
at
anymore.
Least, at least where it would be physically really, really, what would be the...
Yeah, there are a couple caveats to that.
Sensible, yeah. I agree.
Who's your favorite? Did you listen to music today? What'd you do today?
I don't think so. Well, I worked. So, and I listened to a podcast while I worked.
Which one? And where'd you work? I mean...
Well, I work at the National Guard headquarters.
And which podcast did you listen to?
Do you know Joe Rogan?
No.
You will.
Okay.
Because it seems to me that dude will be one of the new type of entertainers. Because it used to be the case that you had, let's say, a late night show, right? And then maybe you had some other side gigs. So, for instance, the most famous comedians were those who had, let's say, David Letterman has his own show. Yeah. that Joe Rogan has his own podcast, right? He's a stand-up comedian and a commentator in the UFC, right? And so he has different types of works he does, but then again, the internet allows all of them to flourish, because the internet is what, let's say, he puts his special stand-up special on Netflix, right? So it's just pure internet. So it's the same for the podcast. It's distributed on the internet, right? And the funny thing is, he's at this point on a level that's even big. I think they made a comparison that's even bigger than CNN.
Wow. Where's he from?
I think New Jersey.
He's from the U.S. Oh,
Yeah. Do you know the show? Do you know the show Fear Factor?
Yeah.
He was a host.
Oh, Joe Rogan. Oh, you listen to Joe Rogan today?
Yeah.
Huh.
Well, because that's the only way I could listen to such a long episode. I mean, he does 2-3 hour episodes. If I would do something that's remotely interesting to me, right, I would not really pay attention. But when I'm doing some work stuff, yeah, it's just one
ear here.
Yeah, and just do simultaneously different things.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a replacement for radio, right?
Yeah.
No commercials, it's just some conversations. And he got, basically, the way I got into listening to him or watching his podcasts was because somebody made short videos about all of his podcast episodes where they looked at some interesting videos. So it was, let's say, one video, a YouTube video of 10 minutes, and it was just a collage of different scenes from the podcasts where he and his guest would say, have you seen the video where the cat does something like this and that, and then they show the video, right? so it was a great concentration of the different kinds of interesting videos.
Huh.
And then afterwards, I just figured, I could just listen to him while I work.
Okay. That's good to know.
So you do know him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to his podcast, so I'm gonna have to. I've actually had it on my list of things to listen to.
Yeah, because I think
listen to a lot of.
I think his podcast downloads exceed 1 billion in a year.
I had no idea he was that big. I knew he was popular. I didn't know he was that much of a force.
Well, I think.
Good for him.
I think a regular episode download was a couple of million, and since he puts out episodes every other day or so,
really,
it adds up.
He does episodes every other day, and he's a.
I mean, today he published 2, right?
He's a libertarian, right?
I guess so. He probably would say that he's more libertarian than anything else.
Do you admire him?
Well, admire would be too strong of a word. I think it's quite interesting to see such a character actually establish himself on the internet as a sort of force.
Do you think you're the Latvian Joe Rogan?
Not in the least. I think there's no need for a Latvian Joe Rogan or any other Joe Rogan.
Huh.
It's just that the internet has established new ways of communicating.
Yeah.
And I think a podcast is just nice because listen to us. We have talked for 2 hours, right? And it's been a ride. I mean, we didn't have a script, right? We didn't plan anything we discussed beforehand. It's just that, all right, let's see where it goes.
We hadn't even introduced ourselves. Is that normally how this show goes?
Well, come on. I didn't know that you are Mark. You knew that I'm Lauris.
Yeah.
See?
That's literally as far as we got.
Fair enough.
Is this normally how your show goes, though? Do you normally just...
Well, it really depends on the situation. For instance, the Swedish couple I told you about, I think they arrived half an hour ago. Probably just waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but basically I'll talk to them. But I had met them beforehand, right? It's just that we didn't really talk about much.
Yeah.
They basically explained that they somehow lost their way in Riga. Didn't find where they needed to go at first. That's about it. I mean, just some small talk.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna use the loo if it's somewhere around here.
The loo. How come?
WC.
Yeah, but how come it's called the loo?
I think it's
Where does that come
Australian
from?
or
The loo?
Canadian. My Canadian friends say it, but my Canadian friends are Australian. Kind of like my Canadian friends are Latvian too.
Your Canadian friends are Australian, eh?
Eh? Yeah. Don't you know?
Well, we can wrap it up. I mean, it's been 2 hours.
I think I could put a stamp on it. We'll make episode 2 some other time.
Actually, yeah. What are your plans afterwards? You are now in Latvia. Where next?
I head for Vilnius Friday. I'll be there. So I leave tomorrow from Riga.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go to Eastern Latvia to Resnas National Park.
Mm-hmm.
And I might camp around there somewhere. I don't really know where. And then I'll go to Vilnius. There's a family I actually met in Georgia that said, hey, come visit us in Vilnius. And they kept sending me messages like, are you close to Vilnius yet? So I'm going to go. And it's interesting. They don't speak much English at all. So
They?
yeah, it's a couple, older couple.
Can I suggest you something? I had funny enough, I had a Brazilian woman here for a month on Airbnb, right? And she was a descendant of Latvians. What, and I didn't know that, but it turned out that I think at the start of the 20th century, quite a few Latvians emigrated, and they even created a colony in Brazil. I don't remember how it was called, but yeah, it was a colony, Nuo Rio or something like that. And it was specifically a Latvian colony. I didn't know about anything about that, right? Hadn't even heard about it. But yeah, she came and said, well, since I'm a descendant of Latvians, there's some form of naturalization I can do, and basically maybe can get even the citizenship. So all right, because she didn't speak any Latvian, and she barely spoke English. She's Portuguese. She's basically Portuguese.
Why would she want citizenship?
Yeah, well, I guess we should have done some chatting more about that, but it was quite difficult to communicate.
So what's this have to do with the Lithuanian couple?
Because I downloaded Google Translate.
Yeah, that's how we conversed the first time.
Put the app in, right, and just pressed the double microphones, and so it just detects. So when I would say, hello, how are you? It would detect, oh, it's English. And then it would translate to the other language you put in. So let's say Portuguese.
Como estás?
So yeah, and then she could say something in Portuguese, and it would translate and say in English. So that's how we talked.
That's what we've been.
And it's fairly. And if the app is working, if it's not lagging,
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, if there's good connection.
At least from English, right? I wouldn't say that Latvian to Lithuanian would be a good choice. But English to Lithuanian, fair enough.
It does have Latvian because it does not have Georgian as an option on Google. It will do it through.
I'm not sure if it has Latvian, but should have Latvian.
Because it won't do Georgian on the conversation on the double mics or whatever.
Oh,
it'll do Georgian verbally, like written, but it won't do oral Georgian.
Well, you need to check out.
I'll see. But
and after Vilnius, where next?
Kaliningrad.
Oh.
And then, because I still have a visa for Russia, it's valid until the 21st.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna sneak in real quick and be like, I don't know, go to Kaliningrad, whatever's there.
Yeah.
And then I'm heading to Poland, to Gdansk, and then to Poznan, and then to Berlin. A friend who offered me occupation, but I'm mulling whether I want to take the occupation or keep traveling. I really want to get to Croatia. It's kind of where I want to go.
That's not really the way to Croatia, is it?
Not at all. Apparently it is. No, I think that is exactly how I'm going to get to Croatia. So it must be the way to Croatia.
All right. So
I'm not going to go any other way.
What is the end? Not end goal, but you know what I mean. Where do you finish?
In September, I go to a wedding. John, Melissa, you guys are awesome. It's going to be beautiful. And it's up by my hometown, so I'm really excited to go see them. And that's a good stop point. Like, when I leave on trips, I almost always have some reason to go home, you know? I think if I left indefinitely, it would give me a really big sense of, what's the word, like, lack of purpose, maybe? If there was no finite to it, you know, if there was no end, and if it were going to extend permanently, I don't know if I'd enjoy it as much.
I think, but there are some people who do that, because I had
plenty of them.
I met an American and I asked him, so where are you from? He said, well, I'm from the world or something like that. Because he told me afterwards, he hasn't been to America for the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
He's been just traveling around.
I've been
Which
more or
seems-
less out of the
yeah.
country for 8 months. I mean, it's been good. But I wouldn't want to do it completely
Well,
like paper in the wind. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's what I
Like,
mean. Indefinitely seems like a bit sad.
Yeah, I think there's and there, you know, you see it a lot, and when you travel, like, see a lot of the runners, people who are just running from something. And I think I have some of it in me. I don't know what it is.
What do you mean that you meet them?
Like in hostels and when I'm
Ah.
traveling, you know, like I see you meet when you're traveling, you meet travelers. You kind of
So what
gravitate.
so what do you
towards each
think?
other.
You mean they somehow try to avoid some responsibility?
I think it's escapism of a sort.
Well, it sounds reasonable to assume that.
Except I really
is
think
it?
that. I mean,
Because I know for you it might be more or less the thing to actually widen your horizon, to not be I don't know what's the proper word, confined by the perceptions of your fellow Americans.
yeah, and it's not so much to like burlay conceptions because I don't really mind. I consider myself an individual. You know, I won't get pinholed by anyone. No one can say, Mark, you're like this. But I do recognize that when I travel, nothing spurns more creativity and more like original thought than traveling and documenting and writing about it, you know? And so I find a lot of identity and a lot of individuality comes through that. Whereas when you live your average life, you get into cycles and repetitions, and those are all well and good, but how much originality and creativity is coming from that? And I guess, you know, if I had to put a hierarchy of things, I think originality and creativity would be very, very high on my list of things that make me feel like a more complete. Or what was the index that you said?
The Gini index.
The Gini index. I think my Gini index goes higher when I'm engaging in creativity and, you know, usually literary, like written.
Mm-hmm.
I like wordplay. I like music a lot. I like the way that the language is used. I like picking up parts of language. I think those parts all come together into some sort of creativity, you know? And so I think that's probably why I travel, is to see those thoughts and to have conversations with people like you know, and see what your thoughts are and how those combine with mine, and what insights I can take from you to carry back with me. And
Well, you know, 2 hours isn't enough. We barely scratched the surface with the lizards, man.
clearly,
Barely scratched the surface.
I didn't take the bullet. I didn't bite the bullet on the lizards. I didn't know enough about it. I couldn't
give it
engage
a
in
bit
that.
of time. Give it some time.
Yeah,
It will sink in.
I'll get back to you on the lizards. I'm gonna find the bathroom though, and then
Yeah. All right, man.
hit up
Let's wrap
lizards.
it up. All right.
do you have a customary greeting? How do you end? You say ciao ciao, ata.
No. Oh, well, ata would be if you just are leaving for good. Let's say we don't know when we will see each other. Then also ata, right? I guess don't the French have something similar? Because I think if
Au
they
revoir?
au revoir would be see you later, for instance, like goodbye in a sense. Well, technically I guess you could use it as goodbye. So yeah, that would be goodbye. But either way,
It's not
man.
goodbye. I'm just going to go to the bathroom, and you're probably going to stop the podcast at that point. Thank you, everybody who stuck with us for these 2 hours and 7 minutes and 56 seconds. You're the real rock stars in this thing. Loris, Mark, we just do our thing. You guys do your things, and that's what makes this great. All of our great sponsors out there, we want to thank you as well.
Like, for instance, Balsk Salos.
I don't know if you noticed me drinking this during the podcast. It was delicious. For those of you who don't have a screen, there's this Bauskas Alus that is delicious in Latvia. You have to try it if you come.
Nice outro.
Lukewarm, preferably.
All right, man. Thanks.
Okay.